Patriot front is found outside of a Pride event. Totally coincidentally, and it's totally coincidental that the FBI was just able to grab them off of a tip. So we'll talk just a bit about what's happening with that and where we go with that and what happens with that. Yellowstone's Mount Doane is renamed to First Peoples Mountain because apparently it was offensive to certain people. The Senate has reached a bipartisan deal on gun control. Yeah, that makes me nervous too. So we'll talk just a bit about what's there and what's going to have to go through the courts because of that. And as we've been trying to talk about for about 5 days now, Mike Rogers rolls out a measure to withdraw the U.S. from the UN. It is going to be all of this and more. Welcome to midterm season. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. I see Jopper9 is already asking about the markets, and luckily that's the first thing we talk about over here on Contemporary every morning. So we're just before the open right now, and we'll be talking about the finance before we get into the main news of the day. But good morning, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have got a full slate. We've got stuff left over from Friday, and they were busy over the weekend. They were definitely busy coming out here trying to tell you and get you to believe things about what's going on in this country because this whole last couple months reeks of desperation off of this, where the mono party is looking to keep themselves into power and the people are starting to reject them. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people are rejecting them with the idea to put a different figure up onto the federal government, onto the top of that department. I don't agree with that. I still think that the most powerful government in your life should be as local to you as they can, because in that instance, then you can look and see your government official in the grocery store once he's made a bill that is going to affect your life and had it passed into law, and you can say, Bobby, what the fuck? And there goes our first slip against the AM radio right there. Come on, man. You know this is going to cripple my family. And that's how I've always felt about this. And that's how I felt for a long time about the way our government is going. And the fact that so much of this is going over to a large, massive government a long, long way away. Wait, didn't our founders try to get us away from that? Anyway, we've got a lot of stuff going on here. We've got to talk about a lot of it here. So let's get into it. Before we do, make sure you guys go check out great shows over from the Turns of Pages Productions Network as we're getting ready to get started. First off, on this channel, I believe there's going to be a January 6th hearing again tonight, which I'm going to stream it again. You don't have to come watch. I know it's going to bore a lot of you people here, but if you want to come out here and hear what it is that they have to say, without a cross-examination, I might add, and air your grievances in the chat, I will have the perfect place for you to do so. And talk with like-minded people about it as well. So come back and join us there. That is not going to be a YouTube video. Do keep in mind, because yeah, CNN's gonna see me using their stream and they're gonna say, hey, shut it down. But that's what we're going to see coming off of that, if you guys want to come join us for that. Also, go check out the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Breckenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, and the Porch Boys. Go check all of those out and help us bring together our dream of building a new site that is by the common man for the common man. Let's get into it, because we've got a lot. And of course, we've got the hard out at 10 because we want to make sure that the Daily Ignoramus goes on unimpeded. So let's get into it. Starting here with the Dow this morning. This is just off the futures right here. And if the futures are any indication, this was Friday's market. If the futures are any indication right now, we are just about back to this 52-week low number. It's not going to take much of a drop. If the futures are what IBD is saying that they are, we're only going to be a couple hundred points away from this 52-week low. So, sub 10,000 Dow. Man, would I like to see that right about now, but that's what we see off of that. Down 880 points, or 2.73% to 31,392.79. That is for Friday's market, and it turned downward right at the end. Because people are starting to look at this. They see the inflation. They see that this is not under control. They got a little sense of security, and that's what we saw for the last month of things coming back and climbing back up. But it was only 8.2, but we're in a cycle that's unsustainable right now. And with the national average hitting over $5 a gallon, who can afford to go to work? They're actually, that conversation is going on. Can I afford to go to work right now? Or am I going to spend more money driving to that job than I am? Or will I have anything left over for rent or anything else? Am I going to spend more than I make? But that's what we see coming off of that. Let's look in at the Bitcoin, which is also not very good news here. Bitcoin has dropped over the last 24 hours to 23,713.20. Over 5 days, that is down $6,463 and 80 US cents. Over the 1 day, though, that's down $2,841 and 80 US cents. That's dropped 10.7% just since midnight. Because once you're on the 1 day, that is just today. So just since midnight, we're down that much. It's incredible. It looks like there might have been a little bit of a rebound up on the tail here, but not enough to make a lot of your regular average Joes feel comfortable about it. I wouldn't think. Now me, I'm going to buy the dip because I know it's got the potential to go back up. I'm not going to spend a bunch of money into it, but again, you throw a $20 bill into it, you cross your fingers and you hope for the best. That's how I play this crypto. I don't throw big money in it. I don't put big mortgages or big loans against big assets. Throw a $20 bill here and there. See what happens. If you lose out big time, you lost 20 bucks. And in today's inflated dollars, that was like losing 30 cents 7 months ago. It's not that bad, but it's bad. So that's what we see coming off your Bitcoin. And gas. Now, full disclosure, gas has come down ever so slightly here in this area. About 20 cents down in the area that I live in right now. However, that is not the case in the Madison area. In fact, the Madison area is starting to catch up with the rest of us. Your low price leaders are the Quick Trip in Sun Prairie, the Costco in Sun Prairie, the Race in Sun Prairie, the other Quick Trip in Sun Prairie. Those are all at 461, but everybody else, 464 to 465, around the Madison area. And again, as I said, the Madison area is usually 20 cents lower than what it is here in the Janesville area where I live. But that has not been the case. In fact, even the little gas station over here in Redacted, the small town that I live in, that's up in the 475 range, but that is down 20 cents over the past couple weeks. So I keep looking and seeing things that show that we're not getting a reprieve, but you know, in my immediate area, there is a little bit of a reprieve here. So we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. But before we get into IBD and seeing the big news of the day, Jennifer Granholm has a message for you, our energy secretary, about the gas and the fuel prices. Let's listen to what she has to say.
Madam Secretary, you know as well as I do, possibly better, that Americans, particularly those in middle income and lower income strata, are in a full-blown panic about what they're seeing when they fill up their gas tank. Are you in a position to offer any calming or reassuring words about what Americans are likely to encounter through this summer when it comes to filling up their gas tank?
Yeah, this summer is going to be rough. I'll just be honest with you.
Madam Secretary, you know.
But don't worry, guys. I have an electric car. Let them eat cake. That right there. All right, let's see what IBD has to say. Dow futures dive, Treasury yields surge to new highs, Bitcoin crashes below 24,000. From Scott Latonin. Dow futures dove Monday morning, chasing unraveling tech issues, and the market moved to extend losses from Friday's stock market sell-off. The Bitcoin crashed below 24,000, while the 10-year yield surged to more new highs. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 was set to open in bear market territory. Oof! Set to open in bear territory. EV giant Tesla skidded 4% lower on Monday. Elsewhere, Dow Jones tech leaders Apple and Microsoft were down 3% and 2.5% respectively, ahead of today's stock market open. Amid a new stock market correction, Dow leaders Chevron, Merck, and Travelers, along with Enphase Energy, Murphy Oil, Northrop Grumman, and Ulta Beauty are among IBD's top stocks to watch for Monday. Look, I'm telling you right now, this is not official financial advice. So do check with your financial advisor, even if you are as anti-war as I am. Even if you think that all troops should be here, stationed on the border, with guns pointed out, and nowhere else in the world at all, anywhere. I would think about and talk to your financial advisor about whether or not you should have Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, even Halliburton, although they're the little dog at this point. Those are the ones that you want to pay attention to right now, because that thing in Ukraine is not going anywhere. This is not official financial advice. Always check with an official financial advisor before making any stock purchases or purchase to your 401k. But I think those are going to be the ones that are going to weather the storm. Because Ukraine. Enphase is an IBD leaderboard stock. Ulta was featured in last week's IBD stock analysis column. Ahead of Monday's open, Dow futures dove 1.8%, almost 2% versus fair value, which, as I mentioned, would bring us just a couple hundred points away from the 52-week low that we saw off the chart earlier. S&P lost 2.3%, and the NASDAQ plunged almost 3%, 2.9%. Remember, overnight trading in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Don't worry, guys, it might come back. Among ETFs, the NASDAQ 100 tracker, Invesco QQQ Trust, dropped 3.1%. The SPDR S&P 500 ETF lost 2.4% in early trade. Exchanges across Asia closed with heavy losses as global markets reacted to Friday's U.S. inflation data. Europe's leading benchmarks traded with losses in the 2% range just after midday Monday. The 10-year yield surged higher to 3.25. Ooh. And given the fact that we don't have a GDP to keep up with that 10-year yield, ooh, that is brutal. That is inflationary. Monday morning hitting another new high following Friday's close at 3.15%. That's not just another, it's the highest it's been in 20 years, 30 years. That's a new high. That's a new record. Following Friday's close at 3.15%. Meanwhile, U.S. oil prices lost nearly 2%, with West Texas Intermediate trading around $118 a barrel. In early March, WTI briefly topped out above $130 a barrel. The price of Bitcoin crashed 18% over the weekend after ending Friday around 29,000. Bitcoin traded around 23.5 in early morning trade, according to CoinDesk, its lowest level since December of 2020. ProShares Bitcoin Energy ETF plunged 18% on Monday morning. And usually this would be where I would cut this. I just want to touch on this one here. The stock market sold off Friday as the major indices finished with heavy losses, ending the week in a down note. Friday's The Big Picture column commented moves were heavily skewed to the downside. The NASDAQ was the index that suffered the most, dropping 3.5%. Its weekly loss came in at 5.6%, sending it back near lows for the year. If you're new to IBD, consider taking a look at its stock trading system. Cancel. Okay, that's an advertisement. We're not going to do that. But I know that, and I always use the actual trading in the Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading the next regular session, but I mean, where do you go from here? Seriously. One of your markets lost 3% just in the futures. They pulled the circuit breaker at 5% on the futures to make sure it doesn't go into a free fall. So, well, we'll see what happens and where that goes. We're going to continue to watch this as we see. Let's grab it. And we've got a couple more finance ones before we get into the main news of the day as well. So strap in because we got to keep on going on. From CNBC, Dow futures tumble 600 points with the S&P 500 poised to fall back into bear market territory. I think we're there. From Samantha Subin and Fred Imbert, futures dropped Monday, putting the S&P on track to fall back into a bear market territory and possibly a new low for 2022. A jump in short-term rates drove the negative sentiment as investors, still reeling from a hotter-than-expected inflation report on Friday, braced for the Federal Reserve to raise rates later in the week. S&P 500 futures fell 2.4% after the benchmark closed Friday, down 19% from its record high, and just above 2.4% above its sell-off from last month. The S&P 500 briefly traded in a bear market, down 20% from its high about 3 weeks ago, but failed to close in that territory. The stock market then bounced in late May until the selling returned last week. Honk honk. The short-term 2-year yield rose by 17 points to more than 3.22% Monday, reaching its highest level since 2007 as investors bet the Fed may have to get even more aggressive to squash inflation. At one point in the session, the 2-year rate traded above its 10-year counterpart for the first time since April. A so-called yield curve inversion seems seen as an indicator of a recession. The major averages last week posted their biggest weekly decline since late January as investors grew increasingly concerned about rising inflation will tip the economy into a recession. The Dow and the S&P fell 4.6% and 5.1% respectively, while the Nasdaq lost 5.6%. A chunk of those losses came Friday when hotter-than-expected U.S. inflation data spooked investors. The Dow dropped 880 points, or 2.7%. The S&P and the Nasdaq lost 2.9% and 3.5% respectively. The odds of a June swoon straight to 3,400 have gone up significantly in our view, wrote Jonathan Krinsky, a technical analyst for BTIG. The S&P closed Friday at 3,986. So that's what we see coming off of our markets here. If you are into anything for your retirement fund, I do suggest having a conversation with your investor. I can't tell you what the best situation is going to be for you, but I would say that it's best to go back and have that conversation right now. Let's see what's happening in our supply chain. Smithfield Foods to shutter California meatpacking plant. From ABC News via the Associated Press, meatpacking giant Smithfield Foods said Friday it will close its only California plant next year, citing the escalating cost of doing business in that state. Now, my question there is, will they have something else to pick up the slack? Will they build in Arizona, Nevada, something a little bit friendlier to business? I don't know. Or is this just going to be another removal of a link in the supply chain? The Farmer John meatpacking plant in Vernon, an industrial suburb south of LA, will shut down in February, with its 1,800 employees receiving severance and job placement support, along with bonuses for those who choose to stay on the job until the closure, said Jim Monroe, Vice President of Corporate Affairs. Some workers, who on average earn about $21 an hour, will also have opportunities to relocate to other facilities owned by the Virginia-based Smithfield Foods Incorporated. The Vernon plant slaughters pigs and packages products such as ham and bacon. Some operations will be moved to the other facilities in the Midwest, but overall reduction in processing capacity is prompting Smithfield to reduce its sow herd in Utah. The company also said it's exploring ways to exit the farms in California and Arizona. Monroe said operating costs in California are much higher than in other areas of the country, including taxes and the price of water, electricity, and natural gas. Our utility costs in California are 3.5 times higher per head than our other locations where they do the same kind of work, he said. The shutdown is not expected to reduce supply or increase costs on products, and Farmer John products will still be sold in California, Monroe said. Well, that's what they say right now, but as far as this goes, this is concerning. And keep in mind, we've seen, what has it been now over the year? 30, 40 food processing plants that are shut down by natural disaster. Actually, I had another article sitting up here talking about a pipeline fire, thinking that it was an actual pipeline on fire in Flagstaff, but I did do some fact checking on that, and that is the name for the hiking trail that goes near where the wildfire is right now. So that's why they're calling it the pipeline fire. So the gas supply is not being affected right now, but still, when you can't afford to eat, what do? Well, you can ask Fortune.com. What happens when you can't afford to eat? Maybe it's your fault that the economy is bad. From Fortune. This is a joke, by the way. I can't believe that this made it past the editor and got published. What causes a recession? Maybe it's you and how grumpy you are about the economy. From Will Daniel. There has been no shortage of doom and gloom predictions from Wall Street since the start of the year. From billionaire investors to former Federal Reserve officers, the list of experts predicating an impending recession seems to grow day by day. Despite bright spots like another strong jobs report in May, what jobs report were you looking at? And an unemployment rate of just 3.6%, a cost of living crisis, stock market woes, and persistent recession predictions are wreaking havoc on Americans' confidence in the economy. More than 80% of Americans now believe the U.S. will fall into a recession in 2022. An April CNBC survey found, and consumer sentiment, as measured by the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index, sank roughly 30% year over year last month, closing in on levels not seen since the Great Recession. Most experts believe that the Federal Reserve policy or macroeconomic woes, like the war in Ukraine and sky-high inflation, will be the cause of any potential recession. But some economists argue that consumers' bad mood and increasing lack of faith in the economy, which is sometimes unrelated to their own financial reality, could in and of itself affect economic growth or even trigger a recession. How did this make it past the editor? Dear customer, it's your fault that the economy is going bad. Pete Atwater, an adjunct professor of economics at William & Mary, told Fortune that if consumer sentiment continues to fall, it could cause Americans to pull back on their spending, leading to a sort of self-fulfilling recessionary prophecy. Oh, really? I'm in the school that believes that how we feel drives what we do, and so sentiment to me is an indicator of what we're likely to do ahead economically, he said. Oh, how dare you not draw yourself to the breaking point and go spend, spend, spend. How dare you try to save a little bit of money for an emergency? Why don't you just go out there and spend it on everything? There's a vicious cycle that takes place when consumer confidence falls, and Atwater says it typically begins with a period of overconfidence like what was seen during the run-up of the stock market and cryptocurrencies in 2020 and 2021. Recessions are almost always preceded by some level of overconfidence where we take on too much risk unknowingly, he said. And what happens then is we find ourselves feeling vulnerable when what we anticipated happening doesn't begin to play out. The vulnerability manifests, according to Atwater, in a spending pullback, which then contributes to a recession, stoking even more fear. To support this view, Atwater points to data from studies on the effect of Twitter users' sentiment on stock prices. For example, in 2015, researchers at the IMT Institute for Advanced Studies found that there is a statistically significant dependence between stock price returns and Twitter sentiment. What you find is that within 24 to 48 hours, the mood on Twitter gets reflected in prices in the stock market, he said. This suggests that how we feel often precedes our actions. This adjunct professor at William & Mary is using Twitter as his decision as to how well the economy is doing. That'll give you some idea how much shit they got on the shelf. So, there you go. Fortune is telling you, just stop being grumpy. Go spend out all your money. That you'll save the economy. Who cares if you're on the cusp of losing your job, or your sentiments are down, or people aren't buying from your job? Just go out and spend all your money. But with that, here is from The Blaze. Analyst from one of Biden's favorite financial outlets says sky-high inflation costs American families an extra $5,520 per year. From Paul Saka. Inflation is walloping Americans in the wallet on a multitude of consumer goods. Sky-high inflation will cost American families an extra $5,520 a year, according to an economic analyst from one of the president's favorite financial outlets. On Friday, the BLS announced that the Consumer Price Index spiked 8.6% year over year, the highest rate in more than 40 years. Moody's senior economist Ryan Sweet revealed exactly how much financial hurt American families are experiencing because of surging inflation. Having inflation at 8.5% on a year-ago basis compared with 2.1% average growth in 2018 and 2019 is causing the average household $346.67 per month to purchase the same basket of goods and services they did last year, Sweet wrote on Twitter. However, that pure cost for households for having inflation running at 8.5% is $460.42 per month. This estimate is based solely on the realized inflation rate and doesn't adjust for what inflation would have been absent the pandemic because that is highly uncertain. Biden has cited Moody's on multiple occasions, including using data from Moody's Analytics in April to argue his infrastructure plan during his town hall in July and during the October 5th infrastructure speech. There is pain at the pump for Americans as the national average for gas rose to more than $5 a gallon, the highest price of all time. And by the way, I did some math and adjusted for inflation. That is still, now at this point, the highest of all time. Gasoline is up a whopping 48.7% last year. Fuel oil skyrocketed by 106.7% year over year, and natural gas spiked 30.2%. And even Moody's is telling you that it's bad. It's bad. So that's what we see from that. A couple shortages, and then we're going to go talk about the January 6th stuff. From Fox 8. Sriracha maker warns of unprecedented shortage of popular products after its crop failure. From Braden Stamps and Michael Bartiromo. Lovers of sriracha-style chili sauce could soon be suffering as bottles of the sauce have become harder to find on shelves. Hui Fong Foods, the company behind the popular Hui Fong brands of sriracha and chili sauces, warned retailers and customers in April of a severe shortage of the peppers used to make its sauces, blaming the weather conditions affecting the quality of chili peppers. Unfortunately, this is out of control, and without the essential ingredient, we are unable to produce many of our products, wrote the company, which produces sriracha sauce, chili garlic sauce, and sambal oli chili paste. Due to the shortage, Hui Fong Foods said it will not be fulfilling any orders for sriracha since April 19, and will not begin taking orders for more until after Labor Day on September 6th. On Thursday, Hui Fong Foods confirmed the issues remain ongoing. Unfortunately, we can confirm that there's an unprecedented shortage of our products, the company wrote in an emailed statement shared with Nexstar. We're still endeavoring to resolve the issue that has been caused by several spiraling events, including unexpected crop failure from the spring chili harvest. We hope for a fruitful fall season and thank our customers for their patience and continued support through this difficult time. A representative for the brand did not comment on which regions, if any, could be more affected by the shortages than others. It's possible that a chili shortage could have wide-ranging impacts on supermarkets and restaurants, as sriracha-style sauces are not only used independently, but also as an ingredient in many other spicy condiments, such as spicy mayo used in wraps, sushi rolls, and chicken sandwiches. It's unclear if other brands of sriracha are experiencing the same issue. A representative for Sriracha Panic, another brand available at specialty stores in the U.S., has not indicated supply shortages on its official social media channels. So, there you go. No sriracha for you. I've never tried sriracha. I guess I'm starting to realize that it's in some things that I do eat, but I've never tried it myself. Full disclosure. I'm not a huge fan of hot sauces. I like the heat, I just don't always like the base flavor. Although the 3 pepper sauce from Arby's is... I love that. That is delicious. And the last thing that we might be facing from CBS. Women face another product shortage. Tampons. From Megan Cerullo. Supply chain snarls are hitting the feminine care aisle, with women venting on social media about how hard it is to find tampons in stores right now. On Twitter, tampon shortage is trending, with some users calling it the latest nightmare for women after the FDA acknowledged widespread shortages of baby formula. Individuals and not-for-profit groups that collected donated feminine care products are also complaining of empty shelves where the monthly essentials are usually stocked. I thought I was going crazy noticing empty shelves where tampons should be, one Twitter user said. Members of an online forum for DC area parents also reported problems sourcing tampons. One member said that she had visited 3 different CVS locations only to find them 99% bare of all tampons. Dana Marlowe, founder of I Support Girls, a nonprofit group that provides bras and menstruation products to homeless and poor women, said the organization is currently feeling the impact of the tampon shortage. We've been getting requests for tampons, and our warehouse shelves are empty. We are literally down to boxes versus pallets, she told CBS's Money Watch. It's been very noticeable. I Support the Girls receives donated products from individuals and corporations, which they then distribute to social service agency partners, including homeless shelters, refugee agencies, and organizations that support victims of human trafficking. Through May 25th, the organization received more than 213,000 tampons, down 61% from nearly 548,000 donated tampons in 2020. Dude, I don't know how Dems survived this. You've come back, and you've told the women that you will provide for them everything. And that there's no place for a woman to ever vote Republican because they're all just evil white Christian males who want to keep them chained to the stove. And then you take this back away? I don't know, dude. And I keep seeing people do. I got blocked by a girl because she was saying, "Oh, this should all be free." And then when asked to explain how you make it free because somebody's got to go out there and pick the cotton, I pointed out the fact that Democrats love to send people out to the fields to pick cotton for free. So that's what we see coming off of that. All right, let's go talk January 6th stuff. I got a collection of that to go talk about, including some videos that, people want you to see. So we'll see what happens with this. And we're going to start with this one here that Fleck has put out. I had not seen this until somebody had shared this out. But yes, this is how much they want you to pay attention to this one. Let's listen and watch.
It's the House Select Committee's January 6th hearing.
It's time for Benny Thompson. It's time for Ellen Schiff. It's time to out the traitors from January 6th. Let's go. except of course Fox News.
It's time to find the people who tried to hang Mike Pence. Wait, do we like Liz Cheney now?
I don't know how they got Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden to make a cameo on this, but
The world does not make sense.
Why don't we get things started?
Most injurious, not securious, always hideous, most ambitious. This is what we call the Jensen Show.
It's the House Select Committee's January 6th.
yes, this is actually how serious I take this. Now, this came from Stephen Colbert, obviously, but regardless. All right, let's see what the Washington Post has to say. Liz Cheney offers GOP a stark choice about January 6th. This is an analysis from Aaron Blake. By the way, when CNN, the Washington Post, MSDNC, when those places come out and say it's an analysis, it's an op-ed. If there was any remaining doubt about Rep. Liz Cheney's commitment to exposing Donald Trump for standing against the Republican establishment, like her father, who dreamed of killing brown children in the Middle East, they were dispatched very early in the House Select Committee's first hearing Thursday night. Cheney had already forfeited her GOP leadership position. No, she didn't. She got kicked the French toast out of it. I'm still trying to compete with the AM radio, folks. And is also likely forfeited her seat in Congress. No, she's about to get kicked the French toast out of that, too. She faces a primary in 2 months. But there she was, Thursday, effectively leading to persecution against Donald Trump. And that's a coup to the committee. It gives the proceedings significantly more than a veneer of bipartisanship. This isn't just Democrats trying to take down a Republican former president. This is the establishment trying to take down the former president. The once rising star product of one of the GOP's first families, that's 3/4 of the problem right there. The committee clearly wants its evidence to do the talking, including testimony from the Trump allies, selectively edited, put together, and without a cross-examination. When they feel the need to be more explicit about connecting the dots, they have Cheney. You know, the woman who got protested by these same Democrats 2 years ago. And in laying out the committee's plans on Thursday night, one message from Cheney was unmistakable. She's presenting her party with a fork in the road. Cheney's most striking comment came in the form of a stark warning to her party. Tonight I say this to my Republican colleagues who are defending the indefensible. There will come a day when Donald Trump is gone, but your dishonor will remain. You didn't want to kill brown children in the Middle East. How dare you? But it wasn't the only time in her statement that Cheney set up a binary choice. Repeatedly, she contrasted Trump with his Vice President Pence. The solemn, wonderful establishment Mike Pence, who wants to spread Christianity in the Middle East by killing brown children. And the latter's actions on and comments about January 6th. She invoked Reagan's comments about a peaceful transfer of power, and she described a divide in Trump aides between those who tried to do the right thing and those who lacked the courage. She played a clip of Pence saying in February, in no uncertain terms, that Trump's plot to have Pence overturn the election on January 6th was wrong. Pence said there was no idea more un-American. Pence really hasn't pressed the case except for when it couldn't be avoided, but Cheney did, and seems happy to do so. Of course she is. Because the Bushes and the Cheneys have become toxic in this environment. Once they were royalty in D.C. A businessman who was loved by all the rednecks who used to love that Christian conservative, bomb the brown kids, we have to go to the Middle East because the Bushes and the Cheneys said so, have now become essentially an anti-war party. They're on the same vein as the libertarians, which I never thought I would see in my lifetime. Again, this is partially because a figure in Washington, D.C. told them so, but I mean, if it gets us to that point of pulling our troops back out of the rest of the world, we'll deal with the methodology later. But yes, you have a binary choice if you're GOP. You can either be the honorable party that bombs brown kids and spends all of our money going to war in the Middle East, or you can go to evil Donald Trump, the insurrectionist. I was going to save this video, but I think this fits right here better. This is a recap of what Liz Cheney had to say.
Good evening, and thank you for joining this Soviet-style January 6th committee hearing. This committee is completely partisan, and everyone on it despises Trump. I would like to preface this hearing by saying I am fully aware that I will not be reelected by the people of Wyoming, so I am doing this simply to get a spot on The View. We're the same people that told you that Trump and Russia were colluding, so you should listen to us and believe what we say. Trump is absolutely horrible. He's horrible. Trump is a terrible person. He's a terrible person. I am absolutely obsessed with President Trump. I talk about him all the time, and I cannot get him out of my head. We should abolish the Electoral College and indict Trump. Trump is bad. Trump is an insurrectionist. Trump is the worst. He's just the worst, and he won't return my phone calls. So there's that. We are also requesting that you ignore the fact that we are pretty much heading into a recession, and it's going to get worse. So January 6th was horrible. Oh, just horrible. It is so much better under Biden than it was under Trump. Biden is good and Trump is bad.
There you go, Liz Cheney, everybody. All right, what else do we have here? From ESPN. Surprisingly, because we don't read from there very often. Washington Commanders Jack Del Rio deletes Twitter account after controversy over remarks. From John Kiem. Washington Commanders defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio deleted his Twitter account on Saturday, one day after he was fined for comments related to a tweet that he made almost a week ago. Another business that polices your off-job activity. Come on. That slider bar is a pain. Washington fined Del Rio $100,000 on Friday for the controversial comments he made earlier in the week referring to the events of January 6th at the U.S. Capitol as a dust-up. The team had no statement on Del Rio deleting his account. Del Rio did not immediately respond to a text message from ESPN. On Friday, Commanders head coach John Rivera said in a statement that Del Rio's comments do not reflect the organization's views and are extremely hurtful to the D.C. area. As we saw last night in the hearings, what happened on the Capitol on January 6th was an act of domestic terrorism, Rivera said. A group of citizens attempted to overturn the results of a free and fair election, and as a result, lives were lost and the Capitol building was damaged. One life was lost. One. Only one. You want another piece of evidence as to why I don't pay attention to the NFL anymore? It is right here. If you don't believe the same way that we believe, then you have no place in our organization. From the Daily Wire. Raskin channels Schiff, insisting to CNN that he has evidence Republicans begged Trump for January 6 pardons. I've got the evidence. I'm going to drop it. Don't worry, it's going to come. Who was the actor, the obsessed actor that claims that he had the piss tape? The pee tape, I'm sorry. Was that De Niro? No, it wasn't De Niro. Who? Oh, Tom Arnold. Yeah, Tom Arnold. Don't worry, I got the tape. I'm going to drop it, I know. From Virginia Cruta. Jamie Raskin appeared to take a page from Adam Schiff's playbook when he repeatedly told CNN anchor Dana Bash that he's evidence that a number of Republicans begged former President Trump to pardon their January 6th activities. Raskin made an appearance on CNN's State of the Union to discuss the ongoing public January 6th committee hearings, which began last Thursday and will carry into the coming week. Bash made a note of the claim that Republicans had asked Trump for pardons, but pressed Raskin on it several times to no avail. Let's listen.
Federal offenses.
I want to ask you about pardons. You revealed this week that multiple Republican members of Congress sought pardons from President Trump after the insurrection. How many of your colleagues in Congress did that? And what evidence do you have? Because you know that Congressman Scott Perry is denying it.
Yeah. Well, the seeking of pardons is powerful demonstration of the consciousness of guilt, or at least the consciousness that you may be in trouble. And that's what's so shocking about this. It's not just one.
And you have evidence that this happened.
It is multiple members of Congress, as the vice chair said at our opening hearing, and all in due course, the details will surface.
So guess there's evidence?
Everything we're doing is documented by evidence. Unlike the big lie, which is based on nonsense, as former Attorney General Barr said, everything that we're doing is based on facts, and this is a bipartisan investigation which is determined to ferret out all of the facts of what happened.
Before I let you go, I want to ask about something that you were carrying in your pocket, a copy of
I got it. No, definitely. I'll show it to you. Yeah, he's got nothing. But that does not stop the left from just running with that over on Twitter. Why did Matt Gaetz ask for a pardon? Can you show me where he asked for a pardon? From The Blaze. This was funny. And you can kind of already see where we're going with this. Left-wing outlets tries to shame Tucker Carlson over January 6th coverage. It backfires spectacularly. From Blaze TV staff. As media channels across the board dutifully ran the same feed from the carefully produced January 6th committee presentation, Fox News chose not to join the totalitarian regimes that, broadcast lies on the homes of the population that they can't turn off, according to Fox News host Tucker Carlson. It's worth noting that the network didn't cover the hearings on Fox Business, hosted by Bret Baier and Martha McCallum, but Fox News opted to stick with its usual primetime lineup. The Recount, a liberal media outlet dedicated to reshaping the news, according to their website, thought that they'd shame Fox News and Tucker Carlson for their non-compliance with the left-wing narrative.
Any dissent is intolerable to them. Like, one guy stands up, Joe Rogan, well, I'm not sure that that's right. Bam, let's destroy him. Like, what impulse is that? That's a totalitarian impulse, isn't it?
Sadly for the Recount on Twitter, reactions on Twitter were probably not what they had in mind. Elizabeth Costa replied in the Recount, Fox News viewers will never learn that the Proud Boys took a taco break during the insurrection. Was it revealed it was beef, chicken, or al pastor?
went back down the hill to the Peace Circle, did a larger crowd start together?
Well, no, first of all, we went round to the back and down the steps, and we took some photographs on the east side of the Capitol, and then we went for lunch. We went for tacos.
So
this one's funny. Select all channels with low ratings. Change low ratings to state-sponsored media. There you go. Select all channels with state-sponsored media. Joel Birch tweets out, yeah, what does that tell you? And Gum B says that the overwhelming majority of people know the corporate news is sensationalized, narrative-driven garbage. Ultra Carolina Brew says, meanwhile, watch, was this video shown?
Burn down our Capitol. And I did not come here for that shit. It ain't Patriots up there anymore. If you go look, they look like Antifa. They don't look like me. They don't look like you guys. It is time. They are going to be hunting the families down, trying to go home now. They got us here after dark. I see a lot of women. I see a lot of kids. Get your families home. Get out of here. They are trying to burn down our Capitol.
Well, that doesn't quite fit the narrative, does it? Let's see. Heck no, it messes with their narrative. I've never seen this video. What about this one?
Police here are willing to work with us and cooperate peacefully, like our First Amendment allows. Gather more Americans under the condition that they will come and gather peacefully to discuss what needs to be done to save our country.
One other or the other. You need a show. You understand? Yes. Show us no attacking, no assault, remain calm.
We're not going to assault. We're going to be heard. Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This has to be peaceful. We have the right to peacefully assemble.
Yeah, that doesn't quite fit the narrative either. This one here, I saw one side get violent, but the other three sides remain peaceful, and here you go. Your outrage is manufactured. BLM riots versus January 6th. 500 plus BLM riots, left wing. January 6th, right wing. Lasted 7 months, lasted a couple hours. 20 plus murders by participants. 0 murders by participants. Hundreds of small businesses destroyed. No small businesses destroyed. 150 plus federal buildings damaged. 1 federal building damaged. However, that is the Mecca. That's the biggest part of their church, so do keep that in mind. 1 billion to 2 billion in damage versus 1.5 million in damage. 2,037 police officers assaulted. 140 officers assaulted. Protesters bailed out. Protesters kept in solitary confinement. Encouraged by media and politicians. Encouraged by fringe political groups and agitators. Downplayed by the media, exaggerated by the media. There's your differences. And then, of course, I like this one. When they go back and talk about everybody who's doing the January 6th coverage and Tucker in the middle. And I don't care for Tucker, but still. The NPC face is classic. So yeah, that didn't quite go the way the recount wanted it to go, I'm guessing. Alright, what else do we have here? This dude. House Judiciary GOP says, why aren't Democrats showing this clip?
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building. to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard today. I know that.
Well, he had his fingers crossed when he said peacefully. Because he planned this whole thing. Donaldo Trumpo over on Twitter. The video that nobody got to see because Twitter took it down 5 minutes after it launched on J6. I'm curious because I didn't pre-watch this. I have no idea what I'm about to see. This very well might be the smoking gun.
I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
Huh. I wonder why that one doesn't get shown.
I know you're hurt. We had an election.
All right. Bad Kitty for Congress. New Ray Epps video. This is from before most got to the Capitol. There's a group of about 12, and Epps says, when we go in, you're leaving this here. You don't need to get shot. Apparently there's a fuller video off of this, but...
list. So can we come up? Yeah, whose side are you on? Constitution or the government? Because they're not the same thing. I'm not picking on them, but you know what? You know what? Noted.
All right,
noted.
Okay, but one more thing.
Yeah, so can we go up there? No?
When we go in,
are we going to get arrested if we go up there?
You don't need to get
Did
shot.
you arrest us all? There's a few of us, like a dozen or so. I'm just saying. And Antifa does this shit all the time. You don't do anything to them. Yeah, we know whose side you're on.
That's a point.
Lisa needs braces, doesn't she? You need a list.
Leave it down here. You don't need to get shot. This was interesting. I didn't pre-watch this one either, but Trump War Room claims that even MSDNC admits that President Trump and the rally had nothing to do with the Capitol breach.
Just the key point that, yes, there was a pro-Trump rally at which the president spoke, and we can absolutely talk about all the things the president said there. But the idea that that rally is the thing that got out of hand and that somehow resulted in the breaching of the Capitol, that rally was very far from the Capitol. Yep. And the people who, as you say, did the initial breach that allowed everybody else to come in, they never even went to that rally. Just the key point that, yes, there was a pro-Trump rally at which the...
So that's what we see coming off of that. All right. The Daily Wire. Real bullshit. Fox News segment goes off the rails when guest brings up January 6 hearings. From Virginia Kruta. A Sunday afternoon Fox segment went off the rails when a guest attacked the network over its decision to leave its primetime schedule intact and air the January 6 hearings on Fox Business. Mike Crute, a liberal radio host from Wisconsin, which I know I've listened to this person before, joins Fox News Live with host Mike Emanuel and argued that the ongoing January 6 committee hearings should have been given top billing on Fox News as they had been on other networks. When Emanuel pushed back, Crute continued to attack the network. Yes, that's something that he does. I've listened to his radio show before. That's absolutely something that he does.
The talks go. Next up from the New York Times, let's put it on the screen. Should Biden run in 2024? Democratic whispers of no start to rise. In interviews, dozens of frustrated Democratic officials, members of Congress, and voters expressed doubts about the president's ability to rescue his reeling party and take the fight to Republicans. Mike, what's your assessment?
Well, we absolutely need to take the fight to Republicans. With all due respect to your Jeff, what a ridiculous answer. Of course we want to stop people that have been identified as people that should be red flagged. To blame it on unmanned schools, unarmed schools, I mean, the cops failed us in this case. But here's the fight part. Joe Biden should be out there and fighting for democracy every single day. We should be talking about the January 6th hearings that go again live, that this network failed to cover, because I tell you what, the real fight is for democracy. The real fight is for the soul, and the real bullshit is that your network won't cover it.
Whoa, 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 whoa. We covered it plenty. We just aired it on the Fox
Not
Business Network. We sent it out to all of our Fox stations.
Fox Business
Dude,
Network.
you're going to come on here. Let me set the record straight. I want to be neutral here, but when you attack our network, I got a problem with that.
Did you
Mike,
run any
that's the kind of
ads during
filth.
Tucker
Mike, let me get
Carlson's show?
in here. Mike, hold on. That's the kind of filth we get from the other side, using profane
That's
language.
exactly the words
the
used
Democrats
by the
want to focus
former
on
Attorney
January
General
6th.
Bill Barr.
The Democrats want to focus on everything but the main issue, and that is the fact that we've got historic gas prices, we've got historic inflation. American people are not able to keep up with these costs. They're falling further behind every month. The Biden administration is making it worse. They've got no answer to any of these problems. This guy keeps talking, okay?
Fellas, we got to run.
I'm trying
Jeff,
to get a point
Mike,
in here that the Biden
slug it out after the
administration
break.
is the reason
We gotta go.
for the inflation that we're seeing. Their policy.
There we go. All right. Posobiec. Now we got to go talk about Kavanaugh for a little bit here. Posobiec tweets out, breaking. Biden talks about getting angry enough to attack political leaders just days after a domestic terrorist was arrested outside of Brett Kavanaugh's house. I'm going to push back on Posobiec, because I don't think the dude was a domestic terrorist. In fact, I don't think that he ever had an intention to do so. I don't think he had any intent to do what he wanted to do. I think he wanted to be that headline where he got his brains blown out by a U.S. Marshal and get martyred for the cause, is what I think that was. Because I don't think he had the balls to go back and actually try to kill somebody. But, hey, let's listen to President Brandon.
You know, I have to admit to you, a lot of us elected officials have been in office for a while. Every once in a while, something you learn makes you viscerally angry. Like if you had the person in front of you, you'd want to pop them. No, I really mean it. You know, I have to admit to you, a lot of us elected officials have been in office for a while. Every once in a while, something you learn makes you viscerally angry. Like if you had the person in front of you, you'd want to pop them. No, I really mean.
And that's President Biden again, trying to do his, I'm the 50s tough guy kind of thing. And I don't think that, hey, Fat, you want to go back behind the woodshed and do a push-up contest, man? You talk to me like that, and I'm going to make sure that you know what the price is for being a wise guy. Come on. Come on, man. But the timing of that was poor. Was damned poor. Dem Senator dodges questions about arresting protesters outside the Supreme Court Justice's home. From John Rigolizzo. Appearing as Democrat Delaware Senator Chris Coons invaded a question about whether protesters demonstrating outside the homes of a Supreme Court justice should be arrested and persecuted under federal law. Appearing as guest on Fox News Sunday, Coons touched a bill he co-sponsored to strengthen security for Supreme Court justices in the wake of ongoing protests outside their homes and the alleged assassination plot against Justice Kavanaugh earlier this week. During the interview, host Brett Baer pointed out that federal law already contains a provision that prohibits demonstrations outside the homes of jurists with intent to obstruct or influence the judicial process. We're getting ready for this ruling, and it's going to be controversial no matter what happens, and if it matches the leaked draft opinion or not. There is this law in the books. Should they follow the law? Should Attorney General say, yes, arrest those people before something happens? Baer asked. Well, Brett, I think if the leaked version of the opinion is matched by what would be a remarkable act of judicial activism, conservative judicial activism, there will be understandable anger across the nation. As an elected official, certainly have had protests outside my house, many of us who serve in Congress and other elected offices, but we need to make sure that all appropriate actions are being taken to ensure the safety of members of our federal judiciary, including Supreme Court justices. Let's listen.
Senator, we're getting ready for this ruling, and it's going to be controversial no matter what happens, if it matches the leaked draft opinion or not. There is this law on the books. I'm just asking, should they follow the law? Should the Attorney General say, yes, arrest those people before something happens?
Well, Brett, I think if the leaked version of the opinion is matched by what would be a remarkable act of judicial activism, conservative judicial activism, there will be understandable anger across the nation. As an elected official, I've certainly had protests out front of my house. Many of us have who serve in Congress or in other elected offices. But we need to make sure that all appropriate actions are being taken to ensure the safety of members of our federal judiciary, including Supreme Court justice.
Okay.
Just answer the question. From the Blaze. And we've got the video there for it, too. But let's read from the top. Bill Maher hammers New York Times for burying Brett Kavanaugh assassination attempt. From Paul Saka. Bill Maher slammed the New York Times for burying the attempted assassination of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. A California man traveled to Kavanaugh's home in Chevy Chase, Maryland on Wednesday. 26-year-old Nicholas Roski was stopped by the Montgomery County Police Department officers and admitted that he wanted to assassinate Justice Kavanaugh. Roski had a handgun, 2 magazines, ammunition, a tactical knife, zip ties, a hammer, a screwdriver, crowbar, tactical chest rig, and duct tape. Roski was arrested and hit with federal charges of attempted murder of Supreme Court Justice. The New York Times, a former newspaper, placed its coverage of the assassination attempt on a United States Supreme Court justice far down on its front page, and the actual story was on page 820 of the Thursday edition of the newspaper. The news that's barely fit to print. There you go. National A1021. Arrest near home of justice. Officials said an armed man who went to Maryland with plans to kill Justice Kavanaugh has been charged with an attempted murder. Page 820. Maher hammered the New York Times for burying the news story and having a leftist media bias.
Point is, I think your point, and the point I would agree with is, the New York Times buried this.
Yeah, it was like a tiny thing below the fold.
If this had been a liberal Supreme Court justice that someone came to kill, it would have been on the front page. And that's what's so disappointing about a paper like the New York Times, because they just wear their bias on their sleeves, and if it's not part of something that feeds our narrative, fuck it, we bury it.
I don't know why I keep agreeing with Bill Maher, by the way. Like, how does this keep happening? From Fox News. After alleged plot to kill Kavanaugh, Republicans targeted in 2017 shooting fear more assassination attempts. From Houston Keene. Full Republican congressman targeted in the 2017 mass shooting at a congressional baseball practice. The revelation that a man was arrested and charged with attempting to murder Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh has sparked fears that the charged political climate could lead to more assassination attempts. James T. Hodgkinson, a far-left former volunteer on Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, opened fire on a group of Republican lawmakers in June of 2017 as they practiced for the annual congressional baseball game. House Minority Whip Steve Scalise was shot and critically injured during the attack, requiring surgeries to save his life. Fresh off a flight from California, police arrested 26-year-old California man Nicholas Roski in the early hours early Wednesday after he took a cab to the Kavanaugh's Maryland house with a gun in order to kill the justice, authorities said. For Republicans who survived the baseball shooting, the alleged attempt to kill Kavanaugh and the surrounding political climate brings back memories and fears of the 2017 attack. For weeks, Democrat leaders from President Biden's White House to Senate Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer encouraged dangerous protests against Supreme Court justices, including at their homes, to illegally threaten and intimidate them in an attempt to change the outcome of a court decision, Scalise told Fox News Digital. How many more times do we have to see political violence motivated by threatening rhetoric before Democrats stop encouraging and condoning this kind of dangerous behavior? The Republican whip continued. Rather than investigating parents at a school board meetings as domestic terrorists, President Biden's Justice Department should look at the actual dangerous violence coming from the radical left that continues to put the lives of people in danger for their political views, he added. Rand Paul, a Republican who was also president at the 2017 shooting, said protesters who gather outside the Supreme Court justices' houses should be arrested. As a victim of politically motivated violence, I've continually spoken out against threats made against our Supreme Court justices and elected officials. Something the Biden admin can't even condemn, let alone acknowledge, Paul said. Those who are threatening these justices and disrupting neighborhoods during the dead of night should be arrested. So, and this is a reality about this. This is a narrative-driven thing. I've noticed it. You've noticed it. You've been paying attention to this long enough that you see it. You see it every day. Well, just like we saw with the New York Times. Like we saw with Scalise. When's the last time we actually sat down and talked about the fact that Hodgkinson got a couple guns with the intent to kill senators? And people were on Twitter saying, when they thought Scalise was going to die, 1 down, 52 more to go. This kind of violence is celebrated on the left. They don't denounce it, they love this. From Spectrum News, Bay News 9 out of Tampa. 31 Patriot Front members arrested near Idaho Pride event. Coming to Bay News 9 by the Associated Press. Authorities arrested 31 members of the white supremacist group that nobody had heard of until a few months ago, Patriot Front, near an Idaho Pride event Saturday, after they were found packed into the back of a U-Haul truck with riot gear. The men were standing inside the truck wearing khakis, navy blue shirts, and beige hats, with white balaclavas covering their faces, when the Coeur d'Alene police stopped the U-Haul and began arresting them on the side of the road. They came to riot downtown, Coeur d'Alene Police Chief Lee White said at a news conference. All 31 were charged with conspiracy to riot, a misdemeanor, White said. The men were going through the booking process Saturday afternoon and are scheduled to be arraigned on Monday, he said. Based on evidence collected and documents, authorities found that the group was planning to riot in several areas of downtown, not just the park, White said. Police found riot gear, one smoke grenade, shin guards, and shields inside the van. White said they wore arm patches and logos on their hats that identified them as members of Patriot Front, he said. Police learned about the U-Haul from a tipster who reported that it looked like a little army was loading up into the vehicle in the parking lot of a hotel, White said. Officials spotted the truck soon after that and pulled it over, he said. How'd they know it was that truck? How many U-Haul trucks did they stop that didn't have Patriot Front inside of them? How did they know it was going to be that exact one? Videos of the arrest posted on social media show the men kneeling on the grass with their hands zip-tied behind their backs. Reclaim America was written on the back of one shirt. Police led the men, one by one, to the front of patrol cars, took off their masks, and then brought them into the police van. Those arrested came from at least 11 states, including Washington, Oregon, Texas, Utah, Colorado, South Dakota, Illinois, Wyoming, Virginia, and Arkansas, White said. Only one was from Idaho, he said. The truck was stopped near where the Northern Idaho Pride Alliance was holding the Coeur d'Alene Pride in Park event. Police had stepped up their presence in the area during the event. It appears those people did not come here to engage in peaceful protests, Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris told a Coeur d'Alene Press reporter. Patriot Front is described by the SPLC as a white nationalist hate group that formed after the deadly Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017, which that in and of itself glowed so brightly that you might get radiation from it. But let's see. We have a group that the left, by the way, claims is so insanely well known that they've been at the front of every single right-wing protest in history. With an arm covering. I don't know, is that cover tattoos? Is that to cover up so we can't come back and say... I noticed that anything where they have any sort of identifying marks, arms, sleeves, etc., those are all covered up for whatever reason. We just see them up there with their hands tied up here. Reclaim America. They've all got a uniform, the mirrored sunglasses that you can't see through, the face covering. And it was so easy to go identify. Oh, look, it looks like it's a small army loading up here in a U-Haul. And they could just happen to grab that U-Haul. And I remember the first time I heard of these morons. When they just happened to throw a rally on the mall, unannounced. You know what I think happened? I remember we talked about it at the beginning of June, right after the Uvalde shooting. I said my biggest fear right now is the fact that somebody, whether it be a Fed op or somebody that they pushed in a Discord server, was going to go to a pride parade and go start shooting. And now that what is this now, the 13th? Now that we're up to the 13th of the month, and there hasn't been a major shooting yet, the government had to go and try to push it along and push it up because, there hasn't been a protest outside of a pride parade, only outside the drag bar. And they didn't get violent outside the drag bar. We have to do something. We have to make it look like they're getting ready to go kill all the gays. And we have, oddly enough, the one white supremacist group that nobody's ever heard of before. Our friends over at NPR have a little bit more to say about this. 31 members of the White National Patriot Front arrested near an Idaho Pride event. This is from Odette Youssef. And remember, NPR needs our money, comrade, to continue to spread their communism and their communist ideals all around the world. So, hit that donate button. NPR needs it. They can't put their people up there to talk quietly to you unless you hit that donate button. So, Let's see what they have to say over at NPR, National Progressive Radio. Let's find out. Also, why did my music kick out? Oh, there it goes. Law enforcement arrested 31 members of white nationalist organization known as the Patriot Front, near a Pride event in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho on Saturday on a charge of conspiracy to riot. The men were packed into a U-Haul and detained a short distance away from the gathering, which was being held at a public park. The men, who traveled from at least 10 outside states, are expected to be arraigned Monday on the misdemeanor count. It is clear to us, based on the gear that the individuals had with them, the stuff that they had in their possession and in the U-Haul with them, along with paperwork that was seized from them, that they came to riot downtown, said Coeur d'Alene Police Chief Lee White. Authorities said they were alerted to the group by a concerned citizen who called to report seeing approximately 20 men jump into a U-Haul truck at a hotel parking lot wearing masks, carrying shields, and that they looked like a little army, said White. Police found at least one smoke grenade in the truck, White said, and paperwork that appeared to show a master plan to riot. Oh! Hold on. So not only did they have one smoke grenade, they had a piece of paper that could very easily be entered into evidence on there that showed their exact plan to do what it is that they were going to do. Oh, here, let's say the names and the names of the people that we're targeting too. The developments capped a day of high tension around competing events, along with Coeur d'Alene Lakefront Pride in the Park, a gathering that drew LGBTQIRAMIGIXT, sometimes Y, community members and supporters from across northern Idaho, was celebrating at its first and largest in-person event since the beginning of the pandemic. Meanwhile, less than a mile away, an anti-LGBT group gathered to pray at the Catholic Rosary, led by self-identifying Christian nationalists who attended by affiliates of the white nationalist America First movement. Also nearby, a motorcycle riding club event encourages members and allies to gather with firearms to take a stand against the Pride gathering. No, it didn't. Idaho does not require a permit or license to open carry firearms. Yeah, be careful of the radiation on this one because this one glows. Now, interestingly enough, and I've not been able to independently confirm this, but there is a photo circulating around right now of one of them carrying a megaphone that's marked as property of the FBI. I push back on that one a little bit just because it doesn't have the official FBI logo that I can see anywhere in the picture. And their government, they love to smear their logo feces all over everything that they own. But what do we see when we see these pictures of Patriot Front? We see jacked, not an ounce of body fat on them, in a uniform, with certain ones of them covering up arms, masked, on a hat, no identifying marks. The only person we see identified is this guy up here, leaning up against the cop car. In a uniform. I know of no other group on the right that does this. r/public freakout. Moment Patriot Front members are exposed by police in Idaho on their way to a Pride event. Yeah,
Look, they all got the nines out, bruh.
not buying that. Ooh.
Dude, they all got fan.
Yeah, okay. Not buying that. According to the Associated Press, Patriot Front leader among those arrested near Idaho Pride. From Lindsay Whitehurst and Sam Metz. After the arrest of more than 24 members of a white supremacist group near a northern Idaho Pride event, including one identified as its founder, LGBTQIRAMIGIXAYD DLTCGMPT+. Advocates said Sunday that the polarization and fraught political climate are putting their community increasingly at risk. From what? Fuentes might pray for you. What risk are you at? Do you think that you'll burst into flames if somebody prays for you? The 31 Patriot Front members were arrested with riot gear after a tipster reported seeing people loading up in a U-Haul like a little army in a hotel parking lot near Coeur d'Alene. Among those booked into jail on misdemeanor charges of conspiracy to riot was Thomas Ryan Rousseau of Grapevine, Texas, who has been identified as by the SPLC as the 23-year-old who founded the group after the deadly Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017. Really? Because if he's 23 years old, then he was like 17 or 18 in 2017. Also among the arrestees was Mitchell F. Wagner of Florissant, Missouri, who was previously charged with defacing a mural of a famous black Americans on a college campus in St. Louis last year. Michael Kilty, Wagner's attorney, said Sunday that he had not been provided information about the charges. He said that Patriot Front did not have a reputation for violence and that the case could be a First Amendment issue. Even if you don't like the speech, they have the right to make it, he said. Patriot Front is a white supremacist neo-Nazi group whose members perceive black Americans, Jews, LGBTQIRAMIGIXTYA people as enemies, said John Lewis, a George Washington University researcher who specializes in homegrown violent extremism. Oh, so they say all the right Fed Post words all the time. Their playbook, Lewis said, involves identifying local grievances to exploit, organizing on platforms like the messaging app Telegram, and ultimately showing up to events, marching in neat columns in blue or white collared shirt uniforms in a display of strength with their faces covered. Yeah, this all glows. There's nothing about this that I buy. But hey, did you know, according to News 4 Jackson, white supremacists are riling up thousands on social media? From Amanda Sietz for News 4 Jacksonville. The social media posts are of a distinct type. They hint darkly that the CIA or the FBI are behind mass shootings. Well, see, it's really not hard when so many of them have so many suspicious circumstances behind them. They trafficked in racist, sexist, and homophobic tropes. They revel in the prospect of a white boy summer. White nationalists and supremacists on accounts often run by young men are building thriving macho communities across social media platforms like Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok, evading detection with coded hashtags and innuendo. The snarky memes and trendy videos are riling up thousands of followers in divisive issues like abortion, guns, immigration, and LGBTQIRAMIGIXTYAPTDRTICI- rights. Department of Homeland Security warned Thursday that such skewed framing of the subject could drive extremists to violently attack public spaces across the U.S. in the coming months. And let's bring them all into the same Discord server that just happens to have a retired federal agent in that same Discord server. These types of threats and racist ideology have become so commonplace on social media that it's nearly impossible for law enforcement to separate internet ramblings from dangerous, potentially violent people. Michael German, who infiltrated white supremacy groups, is an FBI agent. Back up. Maybe you want to delete that line because it sounds to me like the FBI is already in these groups, trying to make them do and dance like the little puppets. Come on, do a racism. Do a racism, come on. You know you want to. It seems intuitive that effective social media monitoring might provide clues to help law enforcement prevent attacks. Yeah, that's also a violation of the Fourth Amendment, German said. After all, the white supremacist attackers in Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and El Paso all gained access to materials online and expressed their hateful intent, violent intentions on social media. Yeah, one of them was in the Discord server with an FBI agent. But it continued. So many false alarms drown out the threats. DHS and the FBI are also working with state and local agencies to raise awareness about the increased threat around the U.S. in the coming months. Well, what are DHS and FBI planning? No, stop paying attention to the fact that there are mysterious circumstances around these things. It's totally not the FBI. But in the wake of this here, from NPR, we on the left have good news for you. A bipartisan group of senators announced a deal for school safety and gun measures. This was heard on All Things Considered from Kelsey Snell. And remember, you still need to hit that donate button because NPR needs our money to continue to tell you why the right is evil and the left is the only good that's in the world. So hit that donate button because Never Printing Reality, National Progressive Radio, needs our money, comrade. Let's see what they have to say. A bipartisan group of Senate negotiators say they reached a deal on a package of safety and gun-related measures narrowly focused on preventing future shootings similar to the one in Uvalde, where 19 children and 2 teachers were killed in their school. The proposal, which has not been written into legislative text, includes money to encourage states to pass and implement so-called red flag laws to remove guns from potentially dangerous people, money for school safety and mental health resources, expanded background checks for gun purchases for people between the ages of 18 and 21, and penalties for illegal straw purchases by convicted criminals. All right. So first off, the U.S. federal government knows that it cannot pass a red flag law, but they can convince the states to do so. It's kind of like the same thing where there's no federal alcohol age. There's no federal drinking or purchasing alcohol age. You have to be over the age of 21 to buy, but that's because all the states came together and made that same standard, because if they didn't, if they made it 20, 19, or 18, then they would lose out on millions of dollars, possibly adjusted for inflation, billions of dollars of federal highway funding. That red flag law thing is against the Fourth Amendment. And people in these red flag states need to start suing for this. Money for school safety and mental health resources. More of your taxpayer money going for that. Expanded background checks for gun purchases for people between the ages of 18 and 21. That violates the 14th Amendment. That is against equal protection. If you reach the age of majority, then you should not be treated differently than anybody else who has reached the age of majority, especially on a federal level. And penalties for illegal straw purchases by convicted criminals, which is already illegal. The agreement has the support of at least 20 senators who worked closely over the past several weeks to find the areas of common ground that could pass the closely divided Senate. The group includes 10 Republicans, meaning a final bill could potentially garner the 60 votes necessary to overcome the filibuster. And it's all these neocons too, your Romney, your Collins, your Murkowski, your people like that. The negotiators call it a common sense proposal that would reduce the threat of violence across the country. Our plan increases the needed mental health resources, improves school safety and the supports for our students, and helps ensure dangerous criminals and those who are adjudicated as mentally ill can't purchase weapons. The group said in a statement, most importantly, our plan saves lives, while also protecting the constitutional rights of law-abiding Americans. No, it does not. It does none of those things. The framework calls for additional vetting for potential gun buyers between the ages of 18 and 21. Yeah, I'm sure the Las Vegas victims, if you accept that narrative for what it is, are really feeling comfortable about that when a 56-year-old man was the one who did all the shooting and mysteriously killed himself in his hotel room after that. And here's the best part. Lawmakers say the plan would also reduce what's known as the boyfriend loophole to include dating partners and preventing convicted domestic abusers from buying a gun. The provision on so-called red flag laws would provide federal funding to encourage states to pass such laws to take guns away from people who already own them, but might pose a threat to themselves or others. Lawmakers say the money creates incentives for states that have not yet passed laws to allow that kind of review and would help ensure the laws are properly implemented. Call your local rep now and tell your local rep that when the federal government comes by and waves a bunch of money in front of them, wait, I think I got a dollar bill within reach. Hang on. Come on, pass the red flag law. Come on. Come on, you know you want to do it. Call your local representative and tell them that you want them to tell the federal government that it can fornicate itself with an iron stick. The school safety and mental health sections include funding for school-based programs like mental health support, violence prevention, and training for students and educators. The plan would also expand telehealth for mental and behavioral treatment and investments in children and family mental health services through community health centers. So when the parent decides that they want to medicate the shite out of their kids, still trying to compete with that AM radio, then that person is now on the red flag list. Once that person turns 18. However, mental health experts like the National Alliance for Mental Illness say the majority of gun violence is not perpetrated by people with a history of mental illness. Really? Excuse me, AM radio listeners, the people I'm competing with right now. Excuse me for this. But in order for you to shoot your grandmother in the face, get into a car chase with police, hit a ditch at 70 miles an hour, get out, shoot at a funeral home, and then go in and slaughter 19 second graders? Outside of the federal planning that went on with that, we're not going to go down that avenue for this, but even outside of that, in order to do all those things I just described all in one afternoon, you've got to be pretty fucked up in the head. If you want to drive 400 miles to almost the Canadian border, kill black people and live stream it on Twitch. Excuse me again, AM radio listeners who have your kids in the car. You've got to be pretty fucked up in the head. Aides have said it would take weeks to go through the legal and technical process of turning a preliminary deal into a final bill. Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, the lead Democrat in the negotiations, told Reuters that aides would begin work on Monday morning. Votes are not expected immediately on this agreement. Senators have been broadly optimistic that any bipartisan agreement will eventually pass the Senate, but the ultimate fate of the bill is not entirely clear. Vote them all out. Anybody who supports this, vote them all out. I remind you that if the government is trying to disarm you, they're planning on doing something that you would shoot them for. I'm going to skip these other two because we've got a lot to go over. AOC dodges and laughs off question about whether she'll back Biden in 2024. From John Rigolizzo. Progressive Socialist New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez de-Twitch dodged a question on whether she would support President Biden's re-election campaign in 2024. Speaking to Bash on CNN's State of the Union on Sunday morning, Seabiscuit refused to answer whether she would back Biden if he ran for a second term, saying that she was focused on helping the Democrat Party keep control over its slim majority in the House.
Before we go, I just want to ask about President Biden. He is saying he's going to run again in 2024. Will you support him?
You know, if the president chooses to run again in 2024, I mean, first of all, I'm focused on winning this majority right now and preserving a majority this year in 2022. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I think if the president has a vision, and that's something certainly we're all willing to entertain and examine when the time comes.
That's not a yes.
Yeah, you know, I think we should endorse when we get to it. But I believe that the president has been doing a very good job so far. And, you know, should he run again, I think that I think it's we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
But right now we need to focus on winning a majority instead of a presidential election.
Seabiscuit's non-committal answer comes just a day after the New York Times, a former newspaper, suggested that many Democrats are also non-committal on backing Biden should he decide to run again. I mean, why would you be? He's a toxic drag on your party. Nobody liked him. But he knew enough about what was going on in the cookie jar with the Ukraine that he needed to have the executive privilege so he'd never have to answer for that again. And of course, no more mean tweets. From Fox Business, House Republican Rep. Desjarlais to introduce new bill to block Biden's student loan relief. From Peter Aitken. Representative Scott Desjarlais of Tennessee is set to introduce a bill that would aim to block President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan. There's a lot of people out there that took out loans and maybe didn't get their dream job, but don't pay them back, Desjarlais told Fox Business. So to somehow decide that they no longer need to have skin in the game, it kind of disincentivizes people from succeeding, in my opinion. Desjarlais' bill follows a similar measure put forth by Mitt Romney and fellow Senators Richard Burr, Tim Scott, Bill Cassidy, and Tom Tillis. The House bill differs from the Senate bill in that it uses more concise language and changes the date of an exemption to cover the regulations as an effect on March 12, 2020, rather than the bill's date of May 11, 2022. The bill's most aggressive provision aims to limit the Secretaries of Education and Treasury, as well as the AG, from taking any action towards forgiving student loan debt except those carried out as part of the Higher Education Act of 1965. I'm getting sick. I'll get back to that call later. This journalist disagreed that student loan forgiveness can help stimulate the economy since it would merely shift the burden of debt from borrowers to other taxpayers. It may help those people who are irresponsible, but the ones who are out there working and paying taxes, now they're going to be saddled with the burden of it. If you want to call these other people's mistakes or borrowed money management, this journalist argued. The bill would only affect direct blanket loan forgiveness, but it would not affect various incentive programs. So, there it is. And this is something we should be watching because they're going to try to sneak this in as they go, so... What else do we have here from CNN? You know, if we were still doing the Monday night stream with KTZed, this would probably be headed for surprise stupidity. Geico ordered to pay Missouri woman $5.2 million after she contracted STD in a car. From Jalen Beckford. A Missouri woman was awarded $5.2 million in a settlement from an insurance company, Geico, after contracting a sexually transmitted disease from her partner in his vehicle, which was insured by the company, court documents show. The Missouri Court of Appeals upheld that award this week. The woman, a Jackson County resident, said she contracted human papillomavirus, HPV, from her partner, according to the court documents, on Tuesday. The Missouri Court of Appeals filed an opinion confirming the initial Jackson County Court arbitration award, finding against Geico. In February of 2021, the woman, anonymously identified in court documents as M.O., submitted a petition to Geico directly. She alleged that her sexual partner negligently caused or contributed to be infected with HPV by not taking proper precautions and neglecting to inform and or disclose his diagnosis. According to court documents, that his insurance policy provided coverage for her injuries and losses. She made a final settlement offer for $1 million to resolve her claims, the documents say. In April of 2021, Geico denied coverage and refused her settlement offer, according to the Missouri Court of Appeals filing. The case was then sent to an arbitrator. The arbitrator determined that there was sexual activity in insured's automobile that directly caused or directly contributed to the cause the woman to be infected with HPV, despite her former partner's knowledge of his positive HPV diagnosis, according to the filing. The arbitrator subsequently submitted that $5.2 million would fairly compensate the woman for damages and injuries. Geico then appealed the Jackson Circuit Court's confirmation of this arbitration award, asserting that the court didn't give Geico a meaningful opportunity to defend its interests, the filing said. Man, people will really sue for anything. My question is this. How do you prove A, number one, malice, but B, was this the first time that they did their business was in this car? That's what bothers me. Because I don't think there's a way to prove that. All right, from the New York Post. Yellowstone Peak renamed for being offensive, Park Service announce. From Julia Musto. The National Park Service announced last week that Yellowstone National Park's Mount Doan would be renamed First Peoples Mountain. The agency said on Thursday the change was taken to remove an offensive name from America's first national park. The U.S. Board on Geographic Names voted unanimously 15-0, affirming the decision. The Wyoming mountain stands at 10,551 feet east of Yellowstone Lake. The mountain was previously named after explorer Gustavus Doan. Born in Illinois in 1840, Doan grew up in California and attended the University of the Pacific at Santa Clara. Before enlisting in the California 100, a federal volunteer unit absorbed by the 2nd Massachusetts Volunteer Cavalry. After attaining the rank of sergeant by 1864, he resigned to accept a commission as lieutenant with the 1st Regiment, Mississippi Marine Brigade, according to Montana State University. After the Civil War, Doan was appointed mayor in Yazoo City, Mississippi in 1867. A year later, he applied for a commission with the Army and was appointed 2nd Lieutenant in the 2nd U.S. Cavalry. For the next 24 years, Doan served with the regiment, attaining the rank of captain in 1884. He had been stationed at the frontier posts in Montana, California, and Arizona during his post-war career. He participated in the Sioux War of 1876, the Nez Perce War of 1877, and the Apache Campaign of 1886. Doan also led the first official exploration of present-day Yellowstone, the Langford-Washburn Expedition of 1870. Toward the end of his life, Doan unsuccessfully attempted to gain the superintendency of Yellowstone National Park and influence widespread Army acceptance for his invention, the Doan Centennial Tent. He died May 5, 1892. The National Park Service said that in 1870, Doan led an attack on the band of Piegan Blackfeet in response to the alleged murder of a white fur trader. During what is known as Maria's Massacre, at least 173 American Indians were killed, including many women, elderly tribal members, and children suffering from smallpox. Doan wrote fondly about this attack and bragged about it for the rest of his life, the agency wrote. Well, he sounds charming. I can see why they might want to do this. I don't agree with it, but I can at least see it from their side of things. I mean, the mountain was named for his accomplishment for being the first person to explore this. In spite of all the stuff that they did that we might look back on and think of, wow, this is a crappy thing to do now. Back then, that was quite the accomplishment. So, yeah. A little bit of breaking news from yesterday into today. Flagstaff pipeline fire map. Update as man arrested over the Arizona blaze. Should I be doing this one first? Let's do this one first instead. Hundreds are urged to evacuate due to wildfire in Flagstaff, as thousands more are told to prepare to leave, from Elizabeth Wolf. A wildfire burning just 6 miles north of Flagstaff has prompted evacuations for hundreds of people, and thousands more have been told by authorities to prepare for future evacuation, authorities said on Sunday night. The pipeline fire was first reported by a fire lookout around 10:15 a.m. Sunday and has grown to 4,500 acres, according to INCIWeb, a U.S. clearinghouse for wildfire information. Burning slightly west of Shoals Pass, the blaze is active on all sides and continues to grow, INCIWeb said. A total of 690 households have been ordered to evacuate, and another group of households has been informed that they may have to evacuate soon or imminently. Coconino County spokesperson Trey Williams told CNN Sunday evening an additional 2,410 households have been told to prepare for imminent evacuation. As of Sunday, no homes or structures have been destroyed, INCIWeb said. While the cause of the blaze is under investigation, authorities arrested a 57-year-old man Sunday in connection with the fire, the Coconino County Sheriff's Office said in a news release. After responding to a report of a fire off of Snowbowl Road, deputies were told that there was a white pickup truck seen leaving the area of the pipeline fire. The release said deputies stopped a vehicle matching the description and arrested the driver. The man was charged with federal natural resource violations, the release said, but regulations prohibit his name, photo, or charges from being released. CNN has reached out to the sheriff's office for more details about the arrest. So, first off, this has nothing to do with a pipeline. The pipeline is the name of the hiking trail that is nearest to where the wildfire started. So we're not sitting here looking at another supply chain issue for fuel. So that is one thing to keep in mind off of this. It's not a panic attack. This is not some sort of arson to keep us from getting gas and try to drive the gas even further up. To try to get us to all either walk or drive electric vehicles. I thought that when I first pulled this up too. So if you thought that now, don't worry about it. I was in the same thing. But yes, unfortunately, a lot of people have been displaced. This is terrible for the people who have been involved in this, and I hope that they continue to, I hope that nobody has to be taken out of their home or that they have to lose their home over this. From the Daily Wire, Shapiro, a complete betrayal at Fox News, okay, gang? Here it is. And they're betraying us. Look, I use news sources that most of you that watch this program don't trust. I use them constantly. I use them all the time, in fact. One thing to watch as we're doing this is that Fox News is another one of those on there. They are legacy media. They're old guard media. They have a narrative to push. Just the same. They need you buying commercials. Just the same as any other outlet. They will jump on the woke thing just as fast as everybody else. Fox News is not your friend. They're not the end-all, be-all. This is from Ben himself, by the way. Fox News highlighted the story Friday of a biological girl whose family encouraged her to identify as boy as part of the Americas Together LGBTQIRAMIGIXTY plus AYTTMBLTXTRAIM - Pride Month series. The video would be absolutely despicable, insane lunacy if I saw it on CNN or MSDNC. To see it on Fox is a complete betrayal of anything remotely resembling conservatism or decency. Let's see what Knowles has to say about this. Call me old-fashioned, but I prefer when my conservative news outlets don't encourage parents to trans their little children.
Only walking down the street, you wouldn't think anything different.
14-year-old Rylan Whittington is a typical Southern California teenager. And the Whittingtons, along with mom Hillary, dad Jeff, and sister Brinley, are a typical family. The only difference, though, in Rylan's eyes, is what this family can mean to the tens of thousands of kids under 18 who identify as transgender.
We put our story out there so people could see that there's another family out there that is going through what we're going through, or there's another family who's proud of who they are.
Before Rylan could even speak, he managed to tell his parents that he is a boy.
I could just see that it wasn't him trying to be a brat. It was painful. It was truly painful for him to have to wear feminine clothing and for us constantly telling him that you're a girl.
And unlike some trans kids, when Rylan came out at age 5 a few years later, he had the full support of his parents.
Initially, there was some pushback from us in trying to understand this.
We were confused like most people are. We thought that gender and sexuality were the same thing. It took us a while to figure out that those two things are different and that children actually do recognize their gender identity very young. Some of them, not all.
But they listened to Rylan and to Hillary's conservative faith.
For me, it's just a deep spiritual belief that you believe in God and he, created us the way he wanted us. Well, then yes, he created Rylan just the way he is.
And they listened to families. They met in support groups.
There was a father who was sitting across the table. He says, "You have no idea how lucky you are to be here," which kind of took me back. I didn't at that point consider myself lucky to be there. And he said, you know, our child had displayed this gender dysphoria or this gender misalignment at the same age that Rylan.
Okay, I can't listen to that anymore. Going back to what Ben has to say, every element of this video is propagandistic, dangerous garbage. The report states that this biologically female child was choosing her gender before she could speak. This is madness. The report further states that Rylan's parents began social transition at the age of 5. This is child abuse. The vast majority of children who display signs of gender dysphoria desist over time. The report is absolute horrifying propaganda. We have moms citing her Christian faith to justify this perversion of biological identity. We have the radical gender theory activist Trevor Project stats claiming that childhood transition is the only way to prevent suicide. I'd rather have a living son than a dead daughter is again propagandistic sloganeering. There's no credible evidence that transition alleviates suicidal ideations among children who identify as LGBTQIRA. You get the picture. Yeah, Fox News is not your friend. They're not your go-to. They are not the network that has your ideas in mind. They are just out to make a buck, like everybody else. And they will publish whatever either gets the most outrage or gets the most clicks, just like everybody else. All right, some foreign news for you. Finland plans to build barriers on its border with Russia. Don't worry, guys, though. Walls don't work. From Reuters, no author given. Finland's government plans to amend border legislation to now allow the building of barriers on its eastern frontier with Russia, it said on Thursday, in a move to strengthen preparedness against hybrid threats amid Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. Finland, which is currently applying for membership to the Western Military Alliance NATO, has a history of wars with Russia, although currently the forest-covered border zone between the two countries is marked merely with signs and plastic lines for most of its 1,300-kilometer or 810-mile length. The Finnish government has rushed to strengthen border security as it fears Russia could attempt to put pressure on Finland by sending asylum seekers to its border, as the European Union accused Belarus of doing at the end of last year when hundreds of migrants from the Middle East, Afghanistan, and Africa got stuck on the Polish border. The government's amendments to the law include a proposal to enable concentrating the reception of asylum applications only at specific points of entry. Under existing EU rules, migrants have the right to ask for asylum at any given entry point to an EU member country. The amendments will allow the building of barriers such as fences as well as new roads to facilitate border patrolling on the Finnish side. Later on, the government will decide on border barriers to the critical zones on the eastern border on the basis of the Finnish Border Guard's assessment, the Minister of Internal Affairs Krista Mikkonen said in a statement. So, because it's against Russia, I've got to ask the leftoids on this one. Are border barriers, are walls still racist? Or is it only when it comes from a country with a strong nativistic population that still has a lot of Aztec blood in it? Not independently verified. Keep that in mind with what I'm about to read. From the Miami Standard, not green check verified. But I know Goats and Scars has been talking about this a little bit, so I thought it would be prudent to add this in here. DUI charges against Pelosi's husband dropped. Cops claim no footage of arrest. From Miami Standard news staff. Paul Pelosi Sr., the 82-year-old husband of Speaker Pelosi, was arrested recently and charged with a DUI, according to a tabloid report that broke the story last week. Pelosi's husband was arrested before midnight on Saturday while driving in the Napa County, then booked into jail on 2 counts, driving under the influence, driving with a BAC of .08 or higher, and was released on a $5,000 bail, the Valiant News reported. And, of course, Pelosi refused to comment. She was on her way to Rhode Island at the time. According to reports, the California Highway Patrol has denied the existence of any body or dash cam footage of Mr. Pelosi's DUI arrest. Aren't you supposed to have that at all times in California? The law enforcement body even reportedly refused written requests for comment by Fox News and apparently hung up during a phone conversation in which the news organization requested the same information. So, no verification of this as of right now. I don't know if they actually have dropped this or if this is still a thing, but there's still the conspiracy out there that it was actually Nancy that was driving that got the DUI and Paul took the fall. So, we'll see what happens with that. Another one from News 4 of Jacksonville. Special Olympics drops the vaccine rule after $27 million fine threat. From Anthony Izaguirre of the Associated Press. The Special Olympics have dropped a coronavirus vaccine mandate for its games in Orlando after Florida moved to fine the organization $27.5 million for violating the state law against such rules. Ron DeSantis on Friday announced the organization had removed the requirement for its competition in the state, which is scheduled to run June 5th to June 12th. In Florida, we want all of them to be able to compete. We don't think it's fair to just be marginalizing some of these athletes based on a decision that has no bearing on their ability to compete with honor or integrity, DeSantis said at a news conference in Orlando. The Florida Health Department notified the Special Olympics of the fine in a letter Thursday that said the organization would be fined $27.5 million for its 5,500 violations of state law requiring proof of coronavirus vaccination for attendees or participants. Florida law bars businesses from requiring documentation of pinkopox vaccination. DeSantis has strongly opposed vaccine mandates and other virus policies endorsed by the federal government. Yeah, nobody's doing this anyway. From Fox News. Rep. Mike Rogers rolls out measure to withdraw the U.S. from the UN and the WHO. From Brooks Singman. The top Republican on the House Armed Services Committee, Rep. Mike Rogers, introduced a measure that would withdraw the U.S. from the UN and the WHO, claiming the bodies have been soft on China. Rogers told Fox News the UN has repeatedly proven itself to be an utterly useless organization. Based if true. The introduction of the bill comes after the UN's human rights chief Michelle Bachelet landed in China to begin an inquiry into the abuses against Uyghurs in Xinjiang last month, but Chinese authorities severely limited the trip with COVID-19 measures. Prior to her arrival, Bachelet said the trip was not an investigation and agreed to visit just 2 locations within the Xinjiang region where China's human rights abuses against Uyghurs have been widely documented. The Charter of the UN states the UN's mission to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of human person, in the equal rights of men and women, and of the nations large and small, Rogers said. However, Michelle Bachelet, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, has proven herself to be nothing more than a puppet for the Chinese Communist Party, aiding the CCP in playing down the very real and horrifying genocide being carried out against the Uyghurs. Rogers said it's unconscionable that China continues to sit on the UN Human Rights Council even as it carries out disturbing genocide on top of its numerous and daily violations of basic human rights. It's clear the UN has abandoned the ideals set in its founding charter, and that's why, among many other reasons, I've reintroduced legislation to withdraw the U.S. from the UN, Rogers says. Rogers reintroduced the American Sovereignty Restoration Act of 2022, which would withdraw the U.S. from the UN and the corrupt WHO. Rogers first introduced similar legislation in 2015. Aides in Rogers' office told Fox News that the bill at the time was referred to the House Foreign Affairs Committee, but unfortunately never made it to the floor. Yeah, unfortunately, they're never going to drop back out of that. They're making and laundering way too much money off of the UN to ever come back out of that. It's a good idea. But unfortunately a foregone conclusion. From the Hill. We're putting them away, folks, in a hurry. Louisiana ban on transgender athletes competing in girls' women's sports now becomes law. From Joseph Guzman. A Louisiana bill barring transgender athletes from competing in girls' and women's sports through college will become law after the state's Democratic governor declined to veto or sign the measure. The Fairness in Women's Sports Act will require Louisiana K-12 schools as well as universities to designate sports teams according to team members' biological sex assigned at birth. Proponents of the bill would argue inherent biological differences between men and women give transgender women and girls an unfair advantage in sports over cisgender women and girls. Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards, who has opposed the bill and vetoed it, a nearly identical measure last year on Monday, said he would allow the bill to become law without his signature, as its codification is inevitable due to the widespread support in the House and Senate. Both chambers passed the law by more than 2/3 vote. Man, we're coming up on 2.5 hours here. I think it's unfortunate, but that's where we are, and I hope that we can get to a point soon where we realize that these young people are doing the very best that they can just to survive. I just think that we can be better than that bill, Edwards said during a news conference on Monday. The governor noted there's not been one instance of an openly trans girl participating in sport in the state since the bill first reached his desk a year ago. Whether it's intended or not, the effect is to send a strong message to at least some of these young people that they shouldn't be who they think they are and who they believe they are, who they know they are, and I find that very distressing, he said. Look, that's all well and good. You know, do your own thing, whatever. Most of you are going to grow out of this. The biggest problem that everyone's had here is that a 6'2" dude in a dress that can jump up and dunk and smash every record that they have on record is not in a similar playing field with women half his size, who are also competing for these same scholarships, these same future opportunities. Like, if you want to go out and wear a dress somewhere, pluck your eyes, shave your legs, and he became a she, that's your own business. If you're a minor, we'd have some questions about the parenting, but that's your own business. But when you're taking away opportunities from people who've worked for their entire lives to this, and it does always seem to go in one direction, MTF, we're again moderate, mediocre players have a massively unfair advantage. You're denying people the ability, again, who have worked for their entire school careers for 12 years to get these scholarships, to get these opportunities. To be denied from somebody who couldn't cut it on the boys' team and decided he still wanted to have that scholarship. So, that's what we see off of that. From the post-millennial, lawmaker who relaxed punishments for sex offenders proposes mandatory Drag Queen 101 class for K-12 students. From Hannah Nightingale. In response to a Texas state representative announcing that he will file legislation to ban drag shows from having children in their audience, California State Senator Scott Wiener, yes, that's Scott Wiener, proposed offering drag queen curricula in schools. Responding to a tweet from Representative Brian Slayton of Texas, in which he announced the legislation, Wiener wrote, "This guy just gave me a bill idea. Offering Drag Queen 101 as part of the K-12 curriculum, attending Drag Queen Storytime will satisfy the requirement." Get your kids out of these public schools. Full on, seriously. Slayton wrote that drag shows are no place for a child. The events of these past weekends are horrifying and show a disturbing trend in which perverted adults are obsessed with sexualizing young children, Slayton wrote. The announcement came in response to a family-friendly drag show that was held in Houston over the weekend, where children were allowed to take the stage and perform at the bar. The event was held at Mr. Mister, which was called the Drag the Kids to the Pride. In 2020, Wiener authored a bill that would end discrimination against LGBTQIRA-MIGIXTB-TLIMIGIXTYL young people by providing exemptions from the sex offender registry. The bill made exemptions for people who were convicted of certain offenses as long as the person convicted is no more than 10 years older than the minor, with the minor being no younger than 14. The bill would exempt from mandatory registration under the Act as a person convicted of certain offenses involving minors if the person is no more than 10 years older than the minor and the offense is only one requiring the person to register, the bill text reads. So this is the guy who moved to decriminalize gay sodomy with a minor, and now he wants to put the kids in front of a drag queen story hour. I am tripping over my words because I have been talking almost consistently, except for this little stretch here, for 2.5 hours. So I apologize, but we're going to try to get through the rest of these. But there you go. Get your kids out of these schools and away from this guy. From the Blaze. Fired Disney Channel actor sentenced to federal prison for trying to meet a 13-year-old for sex. From Paul Saka. Former Disney Channel actor Stoney Westmoreland was sentenced with 2 years in federal prison for attempting to lure a minor to have sex with him. Westmoreland has faced a 10-year prison sentence for the charge of enticing a minor over the internet, but copped a plea deal with prosecutors to the lesser charge of using interstate facilities to transmit information about a minor, according to Deadline. He is required to comply with DNA collection and must register as a sex offender. The actor's computers and electronic devices are subject to random searches. He must report all of the online accounts he uses for communications, including email and social media. As part of the plea deal, Westmoreland is prohibited from contact with minors without adult supervision. On December 13, 2018, Westmoreland, who portrayed a grandfather in the Disney Channel sitcom Andy Mack, allegedly met a 13-year-old boy on Grindr, the self-described world's largest social networking app for gay, bi, trans, and queer people. Westmoreland reportedly shared explicit photos with the teen on the LGBTQIRA-MIGIXTYABITLGAIIMAT hookup app. Westmoreland was actually communicating to a Grindr profile operated by a police detective in Salt Lake City, where the Disney Channel show was filmed, according to prosecutors. Westmoreland took a ride-sharing service to meet with the minor and then take him back to his hotel room, according to court documents. However, police arrested the Disney Channel actor when he attempted to meet the 13-year-old. There you go, that's better. 2 novelty sex toys were seized from the hotel room, the Daily Mail reported. And added, according to police, he's admitted to sending nude photos, and that the male who he was speaking with told him he was 13 years old. Westmoreland's lawyer told TMZ the actor was using Grindr, but believed that he was role-playing with an adult online. The Disney Channel fired Westmoreland immediately after his arrest. He had appeared in 38 episodes of Andy Mack. So, the most unfortunate part of this, the worst part of this, and this is the worst part of the way that they go back to try to do this, and I do agree with them trying to get these people off the streets as quickly as possible so they're not screwing with any kids at the bus stop anymore. But the most unfortunate part of this is because of the way that they did this, this guy is probably going to get off on entrapment charges because, unfortunately, that's entrapment, the way that they did it. It was the same thing with all the Catch a Predator guys, too. And I'm willing to bet that the lawyers for those pieces of human filth are probably going to go find this guy because they can make a quick buck off this guy, especially given the fact that he's a Disney Channel or a former Disney Channel actor and former Breaking Bad actor, and he can afford to pay their excessive legal bills to go back and clear his good name. When they do stuff like this, that is entrapping. And it is way too easy for the scum of the earth to get off on it because of the way that they do these things. From Quartz. Elon Musk wanted more data, so Twitter gave him all of it. Paywalled. Next. Back from the Blaze. David Hogg says Marco Rubio. Oh, it's after 10. So I think we're going to have to cut it after this one. I want to do this one before we go, but then we'll do rules of acquisition and head out of here for the day. I just saw the time. I'm like, oh, yep, no, we gotta go because Daily Ignoramus is coming up. The Beeb. Justin Bieber says he has facial paralysis due to Ramsay-Hunt syndrome and no other medical procedure outside of that. That facial paralysis that he has and that stroke that his wife had, that is totally coincidental and nothing bad happened. From Lisa Respers, France. Justin Bieber announced Friday that he's taking a break from performing because he's suffering from paralysis on one side of his face. In a video posted on his verified Instagram account, the singer explained that he has Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, which has left him unable to move half of his face and unable to take the stage. It's from this virus that attacks the nerve in my ear and facial nerves and has caused my face to have paralysis, he said in the video. As you can see, his eye is not blinking. I can't smile on this side of my face. This nostril will not move, so there's full paralysis on this side of my face. According to the Mayo Clinic, Ramsay-Hunt syndrome occurs when shingles outbreak affects the facial nerve near one of your ears. In addition to the painful shingles rash, Ramsay-Hunt syndrome can cause facial paralysis and hearing loss in the affected ear. Bieber addressed those who have been frustrated by the recent cancellations of his concerts and said he's physically obviously not capable of doing them. This is pretty serious. As you can see, I wish this wasn't the case, but obviously my body's telling me I've got to slow down, he said. I hope you guys understand, and I'll be using this time to just rest and relax and get back to 100% so I can do what I was born to do. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know this kid was still alive. I didn't know he was still touring. I didn't know he was still singing. I didn't know he was still putting out music. He thanked his fans for being patient. He has been doing facial exercises to help. He said he doesn't know how long it will take him to recover, but earlier this week it was announced that 3 of his upcoming performances were postponed. It's going to be okay, he said. I have hope and I trust God. Well, you're going down the right road for that at least. In March, his wife Hailey Bieber was hospitalized due to a small blood clot in her brain. The model later explained that she had suffered a mini stroke due to a small hole in her heart from which the clot traveled to her brain. Nothing to see here. Nothing bad happened. No medical procedures. Make sure you still go out and get that medical procedure, though. You definitely want that. All right, and, well, since it's time for Daily Ignoramus, those of you who want to migrate over to Twitch for the raid, head on over there now. I don't even know if we've got anybody over on Twitch right now. Yeah, we got 4 of you guys over on Twitch, so get ready for the raid here. But before we do that, we will finish out, as we always do, on Monday, with the Ferengi Rules of Acquisition. Probably one of my favorite closing segments. And we're tearing through them pretty quick. So, the last one we did was the 82nd Rule of Acquisition. The flimsier the product, the higher the price. Now, in canon, alpha or beta, there is no 83rd or 84th Rule of Acquisition that we are aware of as humans. So we move on to the 85th Rule of Acquisition, which states, never let the competition know what you are thinking. Some of this goes on, and some of this works off of some of the other stuff that we do, but in our capitalist society, that's always the best way to do that. If somebody is competing against you, don't let them know what you're thinking. Don't let them know what you're doing. Always hold your cards close up to your chest. Work with them when it's advantageous. Form alliances when it's advantageous. But do continue to watch them and see what they're doing and hold your emotions, your thoughts close to yourself. A good poker face in business is absolutely one of the more effective ways to do things. So it's one of the things to see. And, you know, it goes back in. Knowledge equals profit. Every once in a while, declare peace. It confuses the hell out of your enemies. Beware of the Vulcan greed for knowledge. I mean, this all comes back onto the same thing. If your opponents, if your competition can predict your every move, they can stay one step ahead of you. And if they know what you're thinking, they can adjust their strategies to know what's coming up next. Don't lie, except maybe a little bit. But keep your emotions and your thoughts guarded, because if you don't, your competition knows that they own you. So, the 85th Rule of Acquisition, never let the competition know what you're thinking. If you're in business, this is especially big because it brings you to the point where you can bring the big ask and maybe sometimes even get away with the big ask. So, with that, that is what we see off of that. Let's head out of here for the day. Where's the outro music? There it is. All right, well, we got most of it done here. There's still a couple more that we want to go over here, but some of these I will be picking and choosing from. Otherwise, we'll be back here tomorrow morning with more contemporary. We'll be talking more about the Alberta Oil Sands Group, their ad. That was really funny. We'll be talking about Mark Middleton, possibly, David Hogg, and the Gun March. That's coming up here. We'll be talking about that. But otherwise, if you're on Twitch, stick around. We're going to go and raid the Daily Ignoramus, so we'll take you right over to that. Come back and enjoy that. Great creator, friend of the show, friend of the Turns on Pages production network, so definitely go and check that out. And we'll be back here tomorrow morning for more contemporary. Also, watch for Twitter, because there's a very high possibility that we'll also be covering the January 6th hearings on prime time tonight. Give you a chance to come back in and air your grievances and see what it is, and see what your fellow countrymen want to have to say about this as well. So come back and join us for that. Details to be determined, and we will see you next time over here on Contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.